Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a close look at a scenario pretty much every homeowner completely dreads, but one that is incredibly common if you happen to live in the Gladstone and Clay County area. We're talking about water damage. And to be clear, we aren't just talking about a wet floor here. We're breaking down the absolute, literal race against time that kicks off the very second water breaches your home. Whether it's from a suddenly burst pipe, a failing washing machine, or a massive spring storm, the clock is ticking, and we're going to figure out exactly how to beat it.
Okay, let's dive right in. While dealing with water damage feels totally chaotic, we actually have a clear step-by-step scientific roadmap to understand and resolve it. Today we'll be covering 1. Gladstone's unique water risks. 2. The water damage countdown. 3. The 3 phases of restoration. And 4. Navigating costs and insurance.
Section 1. Gladstone's unique water risks.
It's really important to get this right off the bat. Basement flooding in the Gladstone area isn't some rare, freak anomaly. It's actually a highly predictable consequence of our local geography. Gladstone sits right at the exact point where the Missouri River floodplain meets the heavy clay soil of Clay County. And what's crucial to understand here is that heavy clay just does not drain or absorb water easily like, say, sandy soil would. Instead, during our heavy spring storms, all that water just pools directly against your home's foundation.
Which brings us to a huge scientific concept: hydrostatic pressure. Think of it as the intense, heavy force exerted by all that saturated soil. It literally pushes groundwater through tiny foundation cracks, cold joints, and even forces it right up through your floor drains. This is exactly why your basement can flood even if your sump pump is humming along perfectly. The water is simply being forced into your home way faster than the pump can push it out.
And hey, it's not just the soil. Gladstone faces some very hyper-local threats. We've got the Little Platte River overflowing in low-lying areas, and aging storm drains constantly backing up near places like Linden Square. Then, over in Antioch and Gladstone Heights, you have those brutal winter freeze-thaw cycles that cause pipes in crawl spaces and attics to just crack wide open. Add to that the fact that a lot of homes built before the 1980s lack proper vapor barriers, and well, you've got a perfect storm for constant moisture intrusion. Welcome to homeownership in the Midwest, right?
Section 2. The water damage countdown. Because as we're about to see, water absolutely does not wait.
Once water is actually inside your home, a really high-stakes timeline kicks off. 60. That is your magic number of minutes for an emergency dispatch window. When water is actively flooding your property, every single minute counts. Getting an emergency team with industrial extraction equipment on site within that very first hour, that is often the key difference between a manageable, straightforward cleanup bill and a massive structural reconstruction bill. Speed is literally everything here.
Now, if you miss that immediate window, you slam right into this critical threshold, 24 to 48 hours. In Gladstone's naturally humid climate, that is exactly how long it takes for hidden moisture to turn into active mold colonies. Porous materials, think drywall, carpet padding, your insulation, they become perfect breeding grounds, especially when the temperatures are sitting comfortably between 60 and 80 degrees inside your home.
But listen, time isn't the only factor here. The actual type of water matters immensely. Consider the stark contrast between Category 1 clean water, which comes from something like a burst supply line or a leaky dishwasher, and is relatively straightforward to salvage, versus Category 3 black water. Category 3 is what you get from sewage or storm drain backups. It contains incredibly dangerous bacteria and requires the total disposal of affected materials, along with some very strict health and safety protocols.
So let's pull all this together into a timeline. The physical life cycle of a professional flood response looks like this. Arrival happens within 60 minutes. The next 4 to 8 hours are completely dedicated to active water extraction. Then, that 24 to 48-hour mark is your mold risk threshold, demanding immediate drying. And finally, the 3 to 7-day window is dedicated to thorough structural drawing. When you see it mapped out like this, it proves that while the clock is definitely ticking, the problem is highly manageable if you just follow the science.
Section 3. The 3 phases of restoration. Systematic solutions.
As we've established, professional restoration is a whole lot more complex than just mopping up a puddle and crossing your fingers. Let's move on and see how this builds. The exact 3-phase plan that brings order to a homeowner's chaos consists of Phase 1, emergency extraction, Phase 2, structural drying, and Phase 3, final clearance. It's a proven, systematic sequence designed specifically to protect your property and ensure that absolutely all the moisture is gone.
Phase 2 is absolutely critical because you have to move way beyond surface water to find the hidden structural moisture. What you, the homeowner, usually see, a wet rug or maybe a damp baseboard, is really just the tip of the iceberg. The real threat is the hidden moisture trapped deep inside that Missouri clay subflooring or sitting totally undetected inside your wall cavities.
To tackle that hidden moisture, the pros follow the IICRC S500 standards. I know that sounds like a bunch of intense industry jargon, but it simply means there are strict, scientific protocols defining the exact acceptable moisture levels for safe reconstruction. For example, wood framing has to reach 15% moisture content or lower before it's deemed safe. This is exactly why DIY drying methods, setting up a couple of store-bought box fans, almost always fail in Clay County homes. To actually hit those strict standards, you need the right tools. The professional toolkit completely removes the guesswork. We're talking truck-mounted extractors for the heavy lifting, thermal imaging cameras to spot those invisible cold pockets of water hiding behind your drywall, penetrating pin meters to physically test the wood framing, plus commercial dehumidifiers and industrial air movers to force the evaporation process using psychrometric science. Pretty cool stuff, right?
Section 4. Navigating costs and insurance. Let's talk about the financial realities.
All right, let's enter our final section with some pragmatic advice. And honestly, this number might give you a little bit of sticker shock. $3,000 to $11,000. That is the average cost of a water damage claim in Gladstone. Now, a small leak might stay under $2,000, sure. But if you have a finished basement with drywall and carpeting, or especially if you delay your response and allow mold to set in, those costs are going to quickly push way past that $11,000 mark. So the crucial point is understanding exactly how your insurance plays into this. Standard homeowner policies usually cover sudden and accidental leaks. Think a burst winter pipe or an appliance suddenly malfunctioning. However, they almost always exclude damage from gradual neglect or external floodwater backing up into your home. For that external flooding, you generally have to have a totally separate FEMA policy. Which brings us right back to the core thesis of this entire explainer. Speed determines whether you face a cleanup bill or a reconstruction bill. Time is literally money here. But even more importantly, it's about the structural integrity and the safety of your home.
So I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. If the clock started ticking in your basement tonight, are you prepared to beat the mold? Knowing what you know now about Gladstone's heavy clay soil, that critical 60-minute emergency window, and the hidden dangers of trapped moisture, take a look around your own home. Are your pipes insulated? Are your gutters clear? Be prepared, folks, because when water strikes, it absolutely does not wait. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and stay dry out there.